Hey, what's up everybody? This is Muse24, and today I'm taking a look at the first two volumes of the Gambit standalone series. This was a limited series, and these are two volumes that I picked up from the Grand Rapids Comic Con back in November, or at least I believe it was a limited series. Maybe it was an ongoing and it just wasn't very long, because to my knowledge I think there's only a third volume after this of this tradeback series. As you might surmise from the title, it does star Gambit from the X-Men doing his own thing, being solo, and they mention some of the other X-Men. Rogue shows up in the second volume, but beyond that, it's mostly about Gambit. It doesn't really deal with Xavier's school or any of the other major X-Men. It's just kind of him doing his own thing. And the interesting thing about this is that it almost has like a sort of James Bond-ish atmosphere to it. I mean, he's not nearly as suave and, calm and collected as James Bond is. He gets himself into some sticky situations and has to improvise to get himself out of them. But it has sort of that spy, action, thriller, I don't know. There's a little bit of romance in there. A little bit of detective work to a certain degree. And we see Gambit go to a lot of different places, some of which are more interesting than others. I won't sugarcoat that. We see him run into the UK superhero team, and I'll be honest, I don't know that much about the Marvel UK heroes, other than they had that Revolutionary War event a few years back, and that they were important in the Age of Ultron companion story. And I thought they were interesting in that, Captain Britain and everyone else whose name I can't remember off the top of my head because I've read like 3 things that involve them at all. But you can see based on the panels I'm showing here, there's very, very much just like a sort of spy versus spy angle to this first volume. We see Gambit break into some rich guy's vault to steal some artifacts and have some sort of travel to alternate planes of existence or alternate realities or what have you. Runs into some trouble, got action and explosions. I do like the individual cover artwork. The main cover here is kind of just a little bland for my taste. It's not a huge deal when it's sitting on my shelf with everything else, but we do see, like I mentioned, Gambit get into some sticky situations and he has to improvise, and that's kind of fun to see him get the upper hand back from whoever's kind of got the jump on him at the time. He is an entertaining character, but the dialogue does feel a little forced at times, especially when it's banter between Gambit and one of the foes that he's facing off with, or one of the other heroes that he's kind of taunting, or what have you. There's also this girl who you see here on the front of the second volume. She's in the first volume as well. And that's sort of the main story arc that runs between the two first collect tradebacks here is this female thief that he runs into, who he sort of got a rivalry with, but also kind of has some interest in. Obviously he thinks she's cute, but at the same time he's sort of interested in her mysterious nature, sort of what she's after, because there's a bigger plan at play here, and that comes to light more so in the second volume here, when it turns out she's got herself wrapped up in some nasty dealing with Tombstone. And Tombstone's in this club with a bunch of supervillains, which I thought was kind of a fun little play on the idea of, the Avengers have Avengers Tower and all that. The X-Men have the school where all the mutants can hone their skills and stuff, and then these supervillains are hanging out at some nightclub. And I thought that was kind of funny. You see Batroc, you see a bunch of other kind of B and C list villains, and I thought it was kind of a cool little spin on things. We also have some ties to Hydra here later on. Not a huge plot point, but it is important to the kind of overarching story. There's no Baron Zemo, there's no Red Skull or anything involved in this storyline. But Tombstone does sort of have this imposing presence on the other characters there, and it sort of makes him a decent villain for this storyline, I think. I wouldn't say he's a superb villain, but I think he does his job just fine, and he fits with sort of the scale that we're working with in this particular story. When Rogue does come back, I did enjoy that sort of end of the story arc. She's in like the last few issues, and I thought it was kind of fun to see her and Gambit, talk like old times and kind of put their trust in each other because, Gambit's been running solo, so there's only so many people that he would actually call on and put into these sort of high-risk situations that he's working with. And then the end of the story arc, I think it wraps up okay. It's not the most satisfying arc, but at the same time, like, some of the characters we're dealing with throughout these two volumes are not characters that I was super invested in, other than Gambit and Rogue. And like I mentioned, the UK heroes are entertaining, but I don't know enough about them personally to gauge who's the most important to this, if any of them are at all, or if they're just kind of there as like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Gambit went to, England? The very end of the second volume, we do have a little one-shot. It's relatively short compared to the other issues, with Gambit and Hawkeye trying to take down this weird monster thing in the hopes of, one, saving this girl and keeping the monster from going anywhere, but two, getting her number. This is where the dialogue was the most forced, I felt. It was really corny at times in this particular issue, which is unfortunate because I like the whole idea of Hawkeye kind of getting knocked for being a less impressive superhero than some of his other Avenger buddies. Like, it's always something that I found really entertaining across Infinity, Inhumanity. Even though I wasn't super hot on Inhumanity, it was something that got brought up there. Even the older comics like Avengers Forever and stuff like that. Like, there's sort of jokes everybody pokes at Hawkeye rather, and I like the fact that it sort of remained consistent over the years. And here it just felt like someone was writing individual lines, and then they cobbled them all together to try and create this somewhat coherent back and forth banter between the two, and it didn't really convince me at all that this was what they were really saying, this was what they were really thinking. So it's a little unfortunate. The art across the board, I think, is pretty solid. It's not outstanding by any means, but it's good. Of the two, I think the second volume is better written, but that's because it has the context of the first volume to kind of build up toward it. Like I said, there were certain supporting characters, and even a couple main characters that I really didn't feel like I related to that much or had reason to care about that deeply. And that was sort of a problem when you have, a number of these characters running for the majority of the series. The first collection here, I believe, is 1 through 7, and then the second one would be roughly the same number, 8 through 12, and Avengers plus X-Men number 3. So you got a decent amount of issues here, and they're all decently lengthy. I mean, the physical size of this, not terribly different from any other Marvel trade back right now, but in terms of the actual issues, they do read as like, okay, this is a little bit thicker than what I'm used to getting from my Avengers stuff or from my Venom stuff or whatever else I've been reading. So with that in mind, it's a little unfortunate that some of these characters don't flesh out more than what we have in the comics here. I do appreciate the fact that within these two volumes, the story arc wraps up, and I assume the third volume is either a bunch of individual stories or its own separate story arc. But to be frank, as far as I know, it was just the third collection that was the end of it. I'm not surprised that was the end of it. This is just kind of an okay storyline. Like, I like Gambit as a character. I think he's entertaining, but the events that are going on here aren't anything spectacular. This is an all-right story. Nothing exceptional about it, I guess. So it's a little unfortunate. Like I mentioned in the haul video, when I got this stuff, I got a killer deal on all the comics that I got at the Grand Rapids Comic Con. So I kind of got this in just sort of a gamble of, hey, we'll see how it is. Am I super disappointed with it? Not necessarily. But at the same time, it didn't blow me away quite like I kind of had hoped it would. So if you're looking for a Gambit story or, spin-off X-Men story, just know it's going to be all right. It's not anything to write home about, per se. Gambit is the reason you're getting this, if you're going to get it at all. And to that end, he is entertaining. He is fun to read. He's the character I related with the most and sort of understood his reasoning and it's all his development more so. But at the same time, he's also a familiar character. So if you're going into this thinking there's going to be some big revelation with his character, some huge transition for him, it's really not. There's some minimal things here and there that I think do make him more human than maybe other tellings of X-Men stuff that involved Gambit. But, beyond that, I can just sort of recommend this as being okay. and that's about it. So that's pretty much it for this video, and with that, I will see you guys next time.